Hello, I'm Nima Rajan. In his daily address to the country, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says too many Canadians are still going on needless outings, potentially encouraging the spread of COVID-19. He says they're putting healthcare workers at risk, and that threatens everyone who might need medical care. The Prime Minister says none of the lost jobs or the efforts to crank up the national systems for distributing goods will be worth it if Canadians don't stay home as much as possible. Well, meanwhile, the massive cost of compensating Canadians who are out of work due to the COVID-19 pandemic is becoming clearer. Finance Minister Bill Morneau was questioned today from members of the House of Commons Finance Committee about the promised $200 billion aid package. Meantime, the Parliamentary Budget Officer is expected to post reports on the cost measures included in last week's aid package. Well, more than 1,000 Canada Revenue Agency employees have volunteered to bolster the phone lines in anticipation of the monumental Canada Emergency Response Benefit. They will be working from home to answer calls from an estimated 300,000 Canadians per day who are expected to inquire about the government's $2,000 a month program, which starts on Monday. President of the Union of Taxation Employees, Mark Breyer, says it's a historic challenge, and he hopes it will show Canadians that members of his union are not just tax collectors. Meanwhile, dozens of tourists from Canada, Britain, and Australia are stranded in India. Their vacations abruptly ended by that country's 3-week lockdown and cancellation of international flights due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some are finding themselves running short of money and are anxiously waiting to get back home. Global Affairs Canada has said that it is planning several flights to India and other countries to repatriate Canadians stranded by the pandemic. Well, nearly 1 in 10 restaurants in Canada has closed, and nearly 1 in 5 expects to close if restrictions due to COVID-19 don't let up in a month. That's according to a survey from the non-for-profit Restaurants Canada, which estimates that 800,000 restaurant jobs have been lost nationwide due to the crisis. The CEO and president of Restaurants Canada says the numbers are the worst he's seen since the company was founded 75 years ago. Well, another 23 cases of COVID-19 infection were reported Wednesday as Health Minister John Haggie extended the public health state of emergency for another 2 weeks. The orders have to be renewed regularly, and Minister Haggie was quick to point out that it will be months before anything will likely change. The total for the province is 175, and of those people, 15 are in hospital, 3 of them in intensive care, and 10 have recovered. Well, the energy sector led Canada's main stock index higher at the start of trading as the price of oil moved up. The TSX Composite Index was up 153.21 points at 13,029.58. The Canadian dollar traded for 70.14 cents U.S., compared with an average of 70.34 cents U.S. on Wednesday. Well, the First Nation in Saskatchewan is calling for liquor stores to be closed to help fight COVID-19. Montreal Lake Cree Nation Chief Frank Roberts notes that the government has already closed bars, casinos, and schools. He says as a result, there have been more house parties on the First Nation north of Prince Albert. Well, the economic damage from the coronavirus crisis piled up as a record 6.6 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits. The new unemployment claims announced today double those of last week's previous record high. 10 million people have lost their jobs over 2 weeks because of the virus outbreak, and experts say this certainly signals the onset of a severe global recession. Well, the Chinese government is hitting back at U.S. officials and lawmakers who accuse it of suppressing and hiding information about the coronavirus outbreak. A foreign ministry spokeswoman says American politicians should focus their energies on what they can do to protect their citizens. China has been accused of covering up the seriousness of the initial outbreak, allowing it to spread more widely. The chairman of the World Medical Association, German Dr. Frank Ulrich Montgomery, says the recent low Chinese numbers are nonsense, and he suggests that Beijing is intentionally providing false figures. Well, the World Health Organization says it has received donations and pledges to cover its initial appeal for $675 million in support for the first 3 months of its response to the new coronavirus outbreak. The WHO Director General says $677 million in donations and pledges had been received by Tuesday. The appeal was launched in February. Some $300 million will be used for WHO operations, and the rest is for the UN Health Agency's partners or in bilateral support. Well, moving to France now, where it is pushing for stronger solidarity between European Union member states to provide an economic stimulus to restart the economy following the virus crisis. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire, in English, warned Thursday that economic recovery in Europe and throughout the world will be long, drawn-out, difficult, and costly, and there will be no miracle solution. France will propose to the European Union to set up an exceptional and temporary joint fund dedicated to helping all member states' economic recovery in the coming years. Well, meanwhile, one of the UK's biggest bus companies, National Express, says it will suspend operations from midnight Sunday. The use of planes, trains, and buses has fallen to negligible levels during the coronavirus pandemic. But concerns have been raised about a recent spike in car journeys. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who is self-isolating after testing positive for coronavirus, expressed his concern about the increase, tweeting that please do not leave your house unless absolutely necessary. It will really save lives. Well, meanwhile, Syria's government has extended the closures of mosques until April 16th, which is nearly a week before the start of the holy month of Ramadan. The government also extended its ban on visits to prison and detention facilities to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Rights groups have called on governments in the region to release thousands of political detainees held in crammed and unhygienic facilities. In government-controlled Syria, 10 cases of the coronavirus and 2 deaths have been reported, but there are concerns that the virus may be more widespread. In rebel-controlled northwest Syria, the World Health Organization says it is increasing preparedness and testing capacities. Well, Greece's Coast Guard has banned swimming in the sea, speargun fishing, and recreational water sports as part of lockdown measures to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus. The country is in the second week of a lockdown. People are allowed to leave their homes for essential reasons, including walking a pet or exercising, but the Coast Guard says swimming, underwater fishing, and water sports are not permitted. Greece has thousands of kilometers of coastline, and access to the sea and beach activities are massively popular. However, Greece also has 1,415 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 50 deaths. Well, health officials say some African countries will have more than 10,000 coronavirus cases by the end of April. They warn that the continent least equipped to treat serious cases has an enormous gap in the number of ventilators and other critical items. Cases across Africa are now above 6,000. Experts say the continent is very, very close to where Europe was after a 40-day period. Local transmission has begun in many countries. One expert calls the virus an existential threat to Africa. Well, that'll do it for today's news update. I'm Nima Rajan. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you next time.